Jace had never felt so out of place in his life. The interstellar spaceport was a chaos of colors, sounds, and smells unlike anything on Earth. Ships of every shape and size docked along floating platforms, their hulls humming with alien technology. Humanoids with scales, wings, or multiple eyes walked alongside humans, trading goods, exchanging greetings, and hurrying to unknown destinations. Jace clutched his small carry-on bag tightly, trying not to draw attention to himself. He was only here for a diplomatic exchange program, and yet, stepping into the hub of alien civilization made him feel like a child lost in a carnival of the future. He had studied alien languages and customs for years, read manuals and guides until his eyes were dry. But nothing could prepare him for the reality. Every sound seemed strange. Every movement felt alien. Even the gravity on the station was slightly different, tugging at him in subtle ways. And then, right in the middle of this overwhelming chaos, he saw her. She was standing near a glowing information terminal, her eyes scanning a holographic display with calm focus. Jace's heart skipped a beat, though he tried to tell himself it was just a reaction to the alien lighting. She was beautiful, beautiful in a way he had never known possible. Her skin glowed faintly in soft shades of lavender and blue, like sunlight filtering through a mist. Her eyes shifted color subtly as she moved, going from a calm silver to a curious green, and her hair floated slightly, responding to some unseen force. She didn't move like any human he had ever seen. There was a fluid grace to her every motion, like water folding over rocks. Jace, forgetting all manners, almost stumbled toward her. He caught himself at the last second, praying she hadn't noticed. Of course, she had noticed. Her gaze met his, and for a moment, the crowded chaos of the spaceport disappeared. She tilted her head slightly, a faint smile playing on her lips. It was not mocking or condescending, but curious, warm, and inviting. Jace's throat went dry. He tried to look away, embarrassed by his own reaction. But it was too late. She had already noticed him, and there was something in her expression that suggested she understood, perhaps better than anyone else ever could, exactly how he felt. "Do you need help?" Her voice came, melodic but with a slight resonance that made it sound like it was vibrating through his chest. Jace blinked. Yes, I think so," he managed, his voice sounding small even to his own ears. She stepped closer, and Jace noticed small details he hadn't seen before. The faint patterns on her skin that shimmered as she moved, the way her fingers seemed slightly translucent at the tips, and the quiet confidence she carried without a single word. "What are you looking for?" she asked. I'm supposed to meet the delegation from Nivara. I think." His voice faltered. He wasn't even sure he remembered the name of the planet correctly. "Nivara," she said, and her eyes flickered with amusement. "Then you're in the right place. I'm Lyra." Jace's heart thudded again. Jace," he stammered. Lyra's smile widened ever so slightly. "It's rare for humans to get this far into the port without being completely overwhelmed," she said. "But you look like you might survive." Jace laughed nervously, feeling some of the tension melt away. "I hope so," he said. For a few moments, they walked side by side, navigating the crowded corridors. She pointed out alien signs, translated garbled announcements, and warned him of slippery patches on the platform that could send him tumbling into a river of floating cargo drones. Jace couldn't believe how naturally she moved through this environment, while he felt like he was constantly one step away from disaster. At one point, a group of tall, insectoid aliens passed them, their many limbs moving in perfect coordination. Jace instinctively stepped back, bumping into a small hovering cart. Lyra reached out and steadied him with a gentle touch. Her hand was warm, soft, and reassuring despite its alien appearance. "You're too tense," she said. "Relax. You'll enjoy the station more if you stop worrying so much." Jace nodded, grateful, though he wasn't sure he could ever truly relax. As they continued, Lyra began to ask questions about Earth, about his life, his home, his culture. Jace found himself answering honestly, sharing stories about crowded cities, quiet forests, late-night diner trips, and family traditions. Lyra listened, genuinely interested, occasionally laughing or tilting her head in surprise. "I didn't know humans could be so persistent," she said at one point, her eyes glowing softly. "You stick to your goals, even when everything is strange and difficult. That's admirable." Jace felt a warmth in his chest, a rare human emotion mingled with awe. No one had ever spoken to him like this before, like he was both interesting and capable, like he belonged even when everything around him was alien. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert. The station's public system blared a warning. A minor power surge had caused some docking platforms to destabilize. Lyra glanced toward the source calmly, then turned back to him. "Stay close to me," she instructed. "I know a safer route." Together, they wove through the bustling crowds, ducked under low-hanging cables, and avoided precarious cargo platforms. Jace kept pace, surprised at how quickly he adapted under her guidance. At one point, they had to leap over a small gap between platforms, and he nearly fell. Lyra caught his arm just in time, her touch steadying him. "You'll be fine," she said, her voice confident. For the first time that day, Jace truly believed her. Once they reached a quieter section of the station, Lyra paused. Her glowing eyes met his, and for a moment, the noise and confusion of the spaceport seemed to vanish. Jace couldn't look away. "You're different from what I expected," she said softly, a note of curiosity in her voice. "Most humans are too cautious, too worried about what might go wrong. You adapt. You face things even when you don't understand them." Jace swallowed. I try." Lyra tilted her head, her smile gentle. "It's more than that. You have courage. You have potential." Jace felt a flutter in his chest. He didn't know if it was pride, excitement, or something else entirely. But he knew one thing. He couldn't stop looking at her. Before he could say anything else, Lyra glanced toward a hovering gate marked for the Niveron delegation. "That's your meeting point. But I'm glad we ran into each other, Jace." He wanted to speak, to tell her how he felt, but the words stuck in his throat. He nodded instead, trying not to stare too obviously at her glowing eyes. As she walked away, he realized something important. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he belonged somewhere. Like he wasn't just a small human on a huge station full of alien life. He felt seen, truly seen. And somehow, he had a feeling that Lyra had noticed him too, really noticed him, in a way that went beyond appearances or words. Jace watched her disappear into the crowd, his heart racing. The spaceport felt less overwhelming now, more like a place full of possibilities. He straightened his shoulders, took a deep breath, and reminded himself that he had a job to do. But for the first time, he also allowed himself to hope that perhaps this encounter was only the beginning of something extraordinary. Little did he know, Lyra had already marked him as someone worth paying attention to. And in a universe filled with countless stars and endless worlds, their paths were destined to cross again under circumstances far more thrilling than either of them could imagine. As Jace stepped forward toward the delegation gate, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had just gotten a little smaller, a little brighter, and infinitely more intriguing, all because of one extraordinary alien girl who had noticed him the moment he stumbled into her world. The next day, Jace found himself walking through the station with a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. Today was not just another day. It was the start of the mission that would define his time on the station. Humans and Navarans were collaborating to explore a recently discovered wormhole on the edge of the Andromeda sector. Jace's role as a liaison was simple on paper: observe, report, and occasionally assist. In practice, he felt like a tiny cog in a vast machine, surrounded by beings far more experienced and capable. And yet, Lyra was here. She stood by the docking bay, waiting, her calm presence making the bustling port feel less intimidating. The glow of her skin caught the overhead lights in shifting colors of violet and blue, as if she were a living aurora. "Good morning, Jace," she said smoothly, her voice carrying a musical resonance. Ready for the adventure? Jace smiled nervously, adjusting his jacket. I think so. But I have to admit, I don't really know what to expect. Lyra laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes in a breeze. No one really does. That's the point of exploration, isn't it? But don't worry. I'll make sure you don't get lost or eaten by space monsters. Jace chuckled, feeling a warmth in his chest. Her humor was effortless, and her confidence made him feel safer. As they walked together toward the ship that would take them to the wormhole, Jace noticed the subtle ways she moved around the station, how she anticipated obstacles, avoided collisions, and communicated silently with other Navarans nearby. She was graceful, smart, and, strangely enough, completely approachable at the same time. The ship they boarded was sleek, a combination of human engineering and Nivaran biotechnology. Its interior was lit with soft, shifting lights that responded to the mood and movement of its passengers. Jace marveled at the way the walls seemed alive, pulsing gently with a rhythm that made the air feel calm and safe. Lyra guided him to his seat, a small smile on her face. You'll want to keep your seatbelt fastened. Space can be unpredictable. The first few minutes of the journey were quiet. Jace stared out the window at the vast expanse of stars, feeling a mixture of fear and awe. The wormhole they were approaching was a swirling vortex of energy, shimmering with colors he had no names for, twisting space in impossible ways. It's beautiful, he whispered. Lyra glanced at him, her eyes catching the reflection of the wormhole. Yes, but dangerous. We must be careful. Not everything that looks beautiful is safe. As they approached, a sudden tremor shook the ship. The lights flickered, and alarms blared softly. Jace gripped the armrests, trying not to panic. Lyra, however, remained calm. She moved through the cabin with ease, checking instruments and giving precise instructions to the crew. Adjust the energy shields, she said to the Nivaran engineer. Divert power to the stabilizers, and keep an eye on the vortex flow. Jace watched her in amazement. Even in the face of danger, she was composed, confident, and utterly capable. He realized then that part of what he admired about her yesterday was this very quality, the ability to remain steady when chaos surrounded her. The tremor passed, and the ship stabilized. Jace let out a long breath, feeling his tension melt slightly. Lyra turned to him, her expression softening. You did well, she said. You stayed calm when it mattered. I tried, Jace admitted, feeling a small rush of pride. The rest of the journey was tense but uneventful. As they approached the wormhole, sensors detected strange energy fluctuations. The Navaran scientists aboard whispered among themselves, and Jace struggled to understand the complex readings. Lyra noticed his confusion and leaned close, pointing to the display. This pattern, she explained, is like a heartbeat. It is alive in a way we can't fully measure. We must move carefully. Jace nodded, fascinated. Her explanations were clear, and she had a way of making the impossible understandable. He felt a growing respect, not just for her intelligence, but for her patience and willingness to guide him through the unknown. When they finally reached the edge of the wormhole, the ship's instruments detected something unexpected. Intelligent energy beings, moving in and around the vortex. They communicated not with words, but with pulses of emotion and light, sending ripples through the space around them. The humans panicked. We can't understand them. They might attack, one of Jace's colleagues shouted. Lyra, however, remained calm. She placed a hand on a console, closing her eyes briefly. They are not hostile. They communicate differently. We must respond in their language. Jace watched her carefully, trying to follow her lead. She explained slowly, showing him how to mimic the subtle energy pulses that the beings use to convey emotion. It was awkward at first, and Jace felt ridiculous. But gradually, the patterns began to make sense. You're doing well, Lyra said softly, her eyes glowing with encouragement. You have a gift for understanding, even if it is unfamiliar. Together, they managed to establish a fragile connection with the beings. The creatures responded with pulses of curiosity and approval, and the tension in the cabin eased. Jace felt a thrill of accomplishment. He and Lyra had done something impossible. After the first successful contact, the rest of the mission proceeded smoothly. They collected samples, took readings, and carefully navigated the wormhole, documenting everything. Throughout it all, Lyra remained close to Jace, offering guidance, teasing him gently when he made mistakes, and sharing quiet observations about the universe. During a break, Jace and Lyra found themselves alone in a small observation bay. Outside the window, the wormhole swirled endlessly. A river of impossible colors and shapes. "It's amazing, isn't it?" Jace whispered. Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting the shifting light. "It is. But what amazes me more is how humans can face the unknown with courage. You did well today, Jace." Truly, he felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of pride and something more. "I couldn't have done it without you," he admitted. Lyra tilted her head, a faint smile on her lips. "Perhaps. But we learn from each other. That is the point of working together. You teach me about humanity, and I teach you about this universe." For a moment, they just looked at each other, and Jace realized how much he wanted to stay in that moment. The fear, the excitement, the wonder, all of it had brought them closer together. He wanted to tell her how he felt, but the words seemed too fragile to capture the intensity of his emotions. Suddenly, an alarm blared again, breaking the moment. A minor fluctuation in the wormhole's energy required immediate attention. Jace sprang into action, following Lyra's instructions carefully. This time, he felt less like a novice and more like a capable member of the team. Together, they stabilized the ship once more. When the crisis passed, Lyra gave him a rare, approving look. "See? You are braver than you think." Jace smiled, feeling his confidence grow. "I guess I have a good teacher." She laughed softly. "And a good student." As they returned to the station after the mission, the team was celebrated for their success. Humans and Navarans alike marveled at their ability to communicate with the energy beings and navigate the wormhole safely. Jace felt a thrill of pride, but he realized the part that mattered most was not the accolades, it was the connection he had forged with Lyra. That night, Jace walked alone through the observation deck, watching the stars. He thought of Lyra, of her calm confidence, her laughter, her understanding. He realized that the strange, exhilarating feelings he had experienced on the spaceport the first day were no longer a surprise. They were the beginning of something deeper, something he couldn't yet name. Little did he know, Lyra was thinking of him too. Back in her quarters, she replayed the day's events in her mind, noticing his quick thinking, his courage, and the spark of curiosity in his eyes. Humans were fascinating creatures, so unpredictable, so emotional, yet capable of incredible understanding and adaptability. Jace was different. He wasn't just another human to observe, he was someone who stood out, someone worth noticing. The universe was vast and full of danger, mysteries, and wonders. But for the first time, Jace felt that he wasn't just a small part of it. He was connected, and with Lyra by his side, he felt ready to face whatever the galaxy could throw at him. As he drifted off to sleep that night, Jace couldn't help but think. Perhaps meeting her was not just a coincidence. Perhaps the stars themselves had aligned to bring them together. And if that was true, then the adventures ahead were going to be far more extraordinary than he could have ever imagined. The next day, Jace woke to the soft hum of the space station. He stretched, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. Today, the mission was taking them deeper into the wormhole than ever before. Sensors had detected strange, shifting energy forms inside, and the Navarran scientists were eager to study them. Jace, however, felt a small knot of anxiety. The wormhole was unpredictable, and the last encounter had only hinted at what lay ahead. Lyra appeared at the doorway of his quarters, her skin glowing faintly in the morning light. "Ready for another adventure?" she asked, her eyes flickering with amusement. Jace smiled, feeling a rush of warmth at seeing her. "I think so," I just hope I don't mess anything up this time. Lyra shook her head, her smile soft and reassuring. You've already done more than you realize. Trust yourself. And trust me. That simple encouragement made Jace's chest tighten in a way he didn't fully understand. He nodded, determined to do his best. Together, they made their way to the ship, joining the rest of the team for the next phase of the mission. As the ship approached the wormhole, the energy forms became more visible. They were like living lights, flowing through the vortex in intricate patterns, pulsing and twisting as if communicating in a language made of pure emotion. The humans around Jace were awestruck, some fearful, others fascinated. Lyra turned to him. We must observe carefully and respond slowly. Do not panic if they react unexpectedly. Jace nodded, focusing on her calm presence. He felt safer with her nearby, as if her confidence could shield him from the unknown. The first challenge came sooner than expected. One of the energy forms swirled toward the ship aggressively, creating ripples in the wormhole that destabilized the vessel. Alarms blared, and panic spread among the crew. Steady, Lyra commanded. Divert power to the stabilizers and match the frequency of the energy form. Jace tried to follow her instructions, though the technology was unfamiliar. He adjusted the controls as best he could, imitating her precise movements. Slowly, the energy form's agitation lessened, and the ship stabilized. You did well, Lyra said, glancing at him. Her eyes shimmered in approval, and Jace felt a spark of pride. Thanks, he muttered, his cheeks warming. I couldn't have done it without your guidance. Lyra smiled, but there was a thoughtful look in her eyes. You adapt quickly. That is why I pay attention to you. Humans are unpredictable. But you learn fast and act decisively. It is remarkable. Jace's chest tightened. No one had ever spoken to him like this, noticing his efforts and praising him sincerely. He wanted to tell her how much it meant, but the words felt too small for what he was feeling. The next hours were tense but fascinating. The team observed the energy forms, taking readings, mapping their patterns, and attempting communication. Jace, under Lyra's guidance, began to understand the rhythm of their pulses. Unlike the humans, who relied on words and instruments, the Navarans could sense emotion directly, and Lyra patiently showed him how to mimic the energy shifts. At first, Jace's attempts were clumsy, sending awkward pulses that the energy forms ignored or responded to curiously. Lyra encouraged him gently, correcting his posture, hand movements, and timing. Slowly, Jace began to feel a rhythm, a way to connect with beings that existed in a realm he could barely comprehend. You're doing it, Lyra said softly, leaning close. You are making contact. Jace glanced at her, and their eyes met. For a brief moment, the swirling chaos of the wormhole, the flickering lights, and the strange energy beings faded into the background. All he could see was her, glowing and calm, guiding him. His heart pounded, but not from fear. As they worked together, Jace realized something extraordinary. This was more than teamwork. There was a bond forming between them, quiet but undeniable. He admired her not only for her skill and intelligence but for her patience, her humor, and the way she saw him not as a weak human, but as a partner. The mission took a sudden turn when one of the energy beings moved unpredictably, pulling part of the ship toward a vortex spiral. Lyra shouted instructions, but the humans were panicking. Jace remembered what she had taught him and acted quickly. He adjusted the controls in a way no one else expected, using a combination of human intuition and the patterns Lyra had shown him. The ship stabilized. The Nivaran scientists gasped in admiration. Lyra gave him a small, proud smile. You did it. You understood what I could not explain in words. Jace felt a rush of exhilaration. Not only had he saved the ship from danger, but he had earned her respect in a way that went beyond mere praise. It was a moment of true connection. After the crisis, the team docked at a calm section of the wormhole to rest and analyze data. Jace and Lyra found themselves alone in the observation bay again. The swirling vortex outside was mesmerizing, and the air felt thick with unspoken words. You were incredible, Jace said quietly. I didn't think I could do it, but you made me believe I could. Lyra's eyes glimmered, a soft light reflecting her emotions. You had it in you all along. I only showed you the way. Humans often underestimate themselves. But you are capable of far more than you realize. Jace felt a lump in his throat. I'm glad you noticed. Lyra tilted her head, her smile gentle. I always notice. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the lights of the wormhole twist and pulse. Jace felt something he had never felt before, a mixture of awe, admiration, and a growing affection for this extraordinary being beside him. Suddenly, an alert interrupted the moment. A small energy surge threatened the ship's systems, requiring immediate attention. Jace and Lyra sprang into action, moving side by side with a coordination that felt almost instinctive. Together, they stabilized the systems, their teamwork seamless. When the alarm ceased, Lyra looked at him, eyes shining with pride. See? You are brave, quick-thinking, and adaptable. That is why I trust you. Jace smiled, feeling a thrill of accomplishment. I couldn't have done it without you. Lyra's gaze softened. And yet, you did. That is the difference between observation and understanding. You understood. As the mission ended and they returned to the station, the team celebrated their success. Humans and Neverons alike marveled at their ability to navigate the wormhole and communicate with the energy beings. Jace felt proud. But more than that, he felt a deep sense of belonging. He wasn't just a small human in a vast universe. He was part of something bigger, something extraordinary, and he shared it with Lyra. That night, Jace walked through the quiet corridors of the station, thinking of the day's events. He replayed every moment with Lyra, the way she guided him, laughed at his mistakes, and praised his efforts. He realized that the connection they shared was rare, special, and undeniable. Meanwhile, Lyra sat in her quarters, reviewing the mission data, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Jace, the human who adapted so quickly, who acted with courage, who didn't let fear paralyze him. He was unusual among humans, and she found herself curious about him in ways she had never experienced before. The universe was full of mysteries, dangers, and wonders, yet Jace and Lyra had found a connection that transcended species, language, and culture. They had faced the unknown together, and in doing so, had discovered trust, respect, and perhaps the beginnings of something deeper. As Jace gazed out at the stars from the observation deck, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had grown smaller and brighter. With Lyra by his side, he felt ready to explore not only the mysteries of space, but also the depths of a bond that might define the rest of his life. And somewhere in the quiet of the station, Lyra thought the same. The stars stretched endlessly beyond her window, but for the first time, she didn't feel small or alone. There was someone who understood, someone who could keep up with her mind, and perhaps even her heart. The adventure was far from over. The wormhole still held secrets. The universe still held dangers, and the bond between human and alien was still fragile. But together, Jace and Lyra felt unstoppable. In a universe filled with countless stars, infinite worlds, and unimaginable possibilities, they had found each other. And that, they both knew, was the most extraordinary discovery of all. The mission's final day began with a tension that vibrated through the entire ship. Jace could feel it in his chest, a mix of excitement, nervousness, and anticipation. They were about to venture into the heart of the wormhole, a region none of the human or Niveran explorers had ever dared to enter. Reports from sensors suggested that the energy beings there were not only intelligent but also highly sensitive to the emotions of those around them. Lyra moved through the cabin with her usual grace, calm and focused. Her glowing skin reflected the shifting lights of the ship's interior, casting soft hues of violet and blue. When she glanced at Jace, he noticed a subtle spark in her eyes, something between amusement and encouragement. "Ready?" she asked, her voice steady. Jace nodded, swallowing the knot of fear in his throat. "I think so. Let's do this." The ship glided closer to the swirling heart of the wormhole. Outside the viewport, the vortex twisted and pulsed like a living organism, casting colors he had no words for across the cabin. The energy beings were everywhere, moving like ribbons of light, sometimes coiling and spiraling, other times darting with sudden, unpredictable energy. As they entered the core, a sudden surge of turbulence rocked the ship. Alarms blared, and crew members shouted. But Lyra's calm authority cut through the chaos. "Everyone, stabilize. Divert energy to the shields. Follow my lead." Jace followed her instructions, heart pounding but mind focused. He adjusted controls, monitored energy flows, and repeated the patterns Lyra had taught him. Slowly, the ship steadied, the energy being's agitation subsiding. "You're doing well," Lyra said, her eyes briefly meeting his. "Stay focused. This is only the beginning." The heart of the wormhole was more extraordinary than anything Jace had imagined. The energy beings moved in intricate patterns, creating waves of light that seemed almost musical. Their pulses were complex, almost like a language made of feelings. "This is incredible," Jace whispered. Lyra nodded. "Yes. And it is delicate. Any wrong move could cause chaos." Suddenly, a large surge of energy rushed toward the ship, stronger than anything they had encountered before. The vessel tilted dangerously, systems flickering. The humans panicked, unsure how to respond. Jace's instincts took over. "Lyra! What now?" he shouted over the alarms. "Match the frequency. Mirror their pulses," she commanded. Jace concentrated, recalling everything she had shown him. He raised his hands over the control interface, imitating the energy pulses with precision. Slowly, the surge of energy slowed, then stabilized. The ship righted itself, and the alarms ceased. Lyra looked at him with glowing eyes and a rare smile. "You did it. That was perfect." Jace felt a rush of pride and relief. Not only had he helped save the mission, but he had done it alongside Lyra, earning her trust and respect. As the ship floated deeper, they discovered the source of the energy being's unusual behavior. A dense core of raw, unformed energy at the center of the wormhole. It radiated power. Chaotic but not malicious. And the beings seemed to gather around it, as if protecting it. "We need to study it," Lyra said, her tone calm but firm. "Carefully. Any mistake could destabilize the wormhole." Jace nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. Together, they approached the core, monitoring its fluctuations. The energy beings pulsed rapidly, as if communicating a warning. Jace felt the vibrations in his chest, a strange resonance he could not fully describe. "Focus on understanding, not controlling," Lyra instructed. "We are visitors here, not masters." Jace followed her guidance, sensing patterns in the energy. Slowly, he began to understand. The beings responded to intention and emotion, and when he projected calm and curiosity, they mirrored him, allowing the team to safely gather data. For hours, they worked together, Jace and Lyra at the center of the operation. Their coordination was almost instinctive. She would signal subtly, and he would adjust immediately. They laughed softly at mistakes, encouraged each other, and shared moments of quiet awe at the beauty surrounding them. At one point, Jace glanced at Lyra and realized something extraordinary. He no longer felt like a human trying to survive in an alien world. He felt like a partner, an equal, someone who could rise to challenges with intelligence, courage, and heart. And he knew Lyra felt it too. As the mission drew to a close, a final surge threatened the stability of the ship. Lyra and Jace worked side by side, combining human intuition with Nivaran precision. The surge was unpredictable, stronger and more chaotic than any before. Jace took a deep breath, focusing not on fear but on trust in himself and in Lyra. "Now, Jace, mirror me," she shouted. He followed her movements exactly, synchronizing his energy with hers, and with the patterns of the beings around them. For a tense moment, everything seemed unstable. Then, slowly, the energy aligned. The ship floated steadily, the vortex calm once more. Lyra turned to him, eyes shining. "We did it," Jace exhaled, laughter and relief escaping him. We really did it. In that moment, a wave of understanding passed between them, unspoken but powerful. They had faced the heart of the wormhole, navigated unknown dangers, and succeeded, not because of one person, but because of both. The connection they shared had grown stronger, forged through trust, courage, and shared experience. After the mission, the team returned to the station. Humans and Niverans celebrated their success, marveling at the data collected and the way Jace and Lyra had worked together. Jace received praise, but he barely noticed. His mind kept drifting to Lyra, to the quiet moments in the observation bay, and the way she had guided him, trusted him, and laughed with him. That evening, Jace found her alone in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The station's lights reflected off her glowing skin, casting soft hues across her face. "You were amazing today," Jace said softly. Lyra turned to him, a faint smile on her lips. "So were you. I knew you could do it." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the endless stars beyond. Jace's heart beat faster than he had ever known. I don't think I've ever felt like this before," he admitted. Lyra's eyes softened, a gentle light reflecting in them. "Neither have I. Humans are unpredictable, full of emotion and courage. But you are different. You make me feel connected." Jace took a step closer. "Lyra, I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want to face it with you." For a long moment, she regarded him, then nodded. "And I will be there. Jace, we will face it together." Outside, the stars continued their endless dance. But inside the observation deck, time seemed to pause. Two beings from different worlds, different species, different experiences, had found something extraordinary. Trust, respect, and the beginnings of a bond that transcended galaxies. The mission had been a success. They had explored the unknown, communicated with life forms unlike anything anyone had imagined, and survived dangers that had tested them to their limits. But more importantly, they had discovered each other. As the station settled into quiet night, Jace and Lyra stood together, side by side, gazing at the infinite universe. For the first time, neither felt small, alone, or insignificant. In the vastness of space, they had found a connection that made them stronger, braver, and infinitely hopeful. And as they watched the stars, they both knew one truth. No matter what challenges awaited them, they would face them together. The universe was vast and unpredictable, but they were ready, not just to survive, but to thrive, to explore, and to discover the extraordinary possibilities that lay ahead. For Jace, the adventure had started with a single glance, a moment of recognition in a bustling spaceport. For Lyra, it had started with curiosity and the recognition of a human capable of more than anyone expected. Now, together, they were unstoppable. In the endless expanse of the galaxy, full of mysteries, dangers, and wonders, they had found each other. And that, they realized, was the most extraordinary discovery of all.